On this special Halloween-themed episode, we chose a topic we could truly sink our teeth into. Vampires have been a staple of the horror genre since the 1922 silent film Nosferatu, and they show no signs of finding the eternal sleep. From Bela Lugosi to Christopher Lee, to Fright Night and the Lost Boys, to Buffy and Blade, and all the way to modern day with films like Twilight and What We Do in the Shadows. People dig these blood-sucking creatures of the night. But as the writers and directors and mediums have changed, so has the popular image of the vampire. We wonder, is this how the undead have managed to survive all these years? As always, thanks for checking out the podcast, and don't forget to subscribe to Sidebar Forever on sidebarforever.com or wherever you get your podcast. And hey, the pandemic has a lot of us keeping it close to the house this Halloween, and with good reason. It's scary out there. To all of our listeners and friends who do decide to venture out this Saturday, please be safe and definitely wear your mask.
Good morning, Dr. Silberman. How's the knee?
Did you just have a brain fart?
I know Taekwondo.
Stop eating my sesame cake!
You're killing me, Smalls.
Fuck with me, and we'll see who shits on the sidewalk.
Come quietly, or there will be trouble.
Clearly, I wasn't talking to you, big titties. You cherub-looking motherfucker.
While you were still learning how to spell your name, I was being trained to conquer galaxies.
The real question is, what are those?
Let's all hit our best group vampire laugh.
Remix! You put that bad boy remix on that Dracula. That's right, yeah. That's right, blah.
Man, I just say right off the bat, man. Didn't realize how much I actually love the concept and idea of vampires, dude. In so many different ways. It goes beyond just the normal genre oriented things, you know. I played a game for years called Legacy of Kain, which is based on a vampire.
Yeah. PlayStation, yeah.
Shit's dope, bro. And it's just continued to be a thing. The idea of sucking blood is not the thing. It's the idea of the undead and things of that nature, which were the thing for me. And being able to be the mortality of the situation, which was always very attractive to me, and being able to live for generations and whatnot. You know what I mean? It's really cool.
Yeah. And you know, it's funny too, D. It's like that's at once the irony of vampires is how, like, at once vampires are very sexy because they can live forever and see so many, decades, and the whole thing of I can stay young forever, but it's tragic in that you have to take the life's blood literally of someone else, and you can never die, meaning that you don't know how regular humans feel. You know, regular humans, we have that sense of mortality. We have that sense of, oh man, there is a beginning of my life and there is a ending of my life. And unfortunately, when I meet you, you're possibly the ending of my life, even though you may grant me mortality by turning me into a vampire. But still, that's basically the end of my life. Really.
Wow.
I might live forever, but that's the end of my life.
Well, and to take it even a step farther, the idea of living forever. So you still have a sense of love for certain people, and if they're humans, if it's a familiar, if it's someone who isn't immortal, you're going to watch everyone you love, everyone in your family die. The other thing too is the idea of not having death be something that is imminent for you. if you notice, like most vampires, they're just kind of wandering and kind of aimless.
True.
There's no goal in life because there's no end to life.
Right.
Life is only about enjoying the moment because every moment can be enjoyed.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no finality to it. So I think that I heard a scientist say that that's one of the differences between us and the other animals is that we have a sense of our own mortality and our own end of life, and other animals don't. So that's why animals are constantly just living in the moment.
Wow.
Anyway,
Wow.
Man, we get deep off the bat, yo. I like that.
Yeah, man.
off the
Yeah,
rip,
I
yo,
like this.
from the giddy up.
Yeah, man, that's very interesting, man. Well, you guys hit it right out of the park, man. I mean, the concept of legacy doesn't exist for regular animals and regular creatures. It's only us. I mean, I think they have a sense of urgency because it's ingrained in them to make things, build stuff, and to erect stuff, and to create and eat stuff. But that's all they have. For us, it's an intellectual thing.
And most scientists would say that's really more of a survival instinct. Get food so I can live, procreate so it's just an instinct. Build a shelter or whatever so that we can kind of protect ourselves and keep the elements off of us.
The elements and other predators.
Stay warm.
Survival. Yep. And that's crazy when you really think about it. That really describes vampires, man. They need to feed in order to survive, and they're always constantly moving. Like I need fresh blood, so to speak. You know what I'm saying? I need to find another place to do this. So it's almost, in its essence, vampirism can be kind of a corollary to just that basic animal instinct. You know what I'm saying? But you're coupled with those human type of qualities.
As we start to get into the show proper, Adrian turned me on to the movie Near Dark, which I had never seen, and I watched it a couple weeks ago. But one of the things on the TV show, what they do in the shadows, is they're constantly obsessed with wanting to suck the blood of virgins. And so the show is set in modern day in Staten Island. They live in a house in Staten Island. So
I know where I was going with that, D. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
So they're constantly, when they're looking to feed on virgins, they're constantly finding like nerds and gamers and comic book people, because that's the only source of virgins.
Wow.
Dang.
Oh,
wow.
man.
1, 2, 3, nerds.
Right.
Wow.
Nerd alert.
Wow.
Man, well, yo, before we get too deep, man, Swain, why don't you tell the good people out there what the topic is today? The topic proper.
Right.
Well, if you hadn't guessed, we're talking about vampires on TV and in film over the decades, and kind of how the image of the vampire and the mythology of the vampire has changed with the decades, and maybe why some of that stuff has happened.
Yeah.
And just have some general fun, on this special Halloween episode. Just talking about the creatures of the night, the undead, the bloodsuckers.
Yes.
And I'm gonna go a little deeper than that with some of the things I'm talking about, man. Like I hinted at the very beginning. But go ahead, let's start.
There you go.
No. That's perfect.
Exactly. Jump on in, splash.
Yeah.
Right. Get your feet wet. Get your feet wet.
Splash.
But I've never seen Nosferatu, which is considered like the first version of a vampire on film. It came out in 1922. It's a German silent film.
Yeah, Max Shrek.
Max Shrek as the titular character. Have you guys ever seen the movie?
Only parts of it. Like I've seen the little cinematic, sketchy little goofy looking bald head guy with the big teeth.
Right.
And I wasn't very afraid of him. Like here's what made me afraid of it. Once again, attributed to great camera work and lighting. It was the way it was set up that was scary. It wasn't him that was scary. It was the way he was framed.
Yeah.
So,
and it's that
the chiaroscuro lighting, the dramatic lighting.
And it's there's that one frame that I'm sure everyone has seen, but they didn't know it was Nosferatu. the one with him walking up the stairs and he's all hunched over. It's like.
Yeah.
And you see like his shadow against the wall.
Right.
You almost hear like that old-timey silent music piano.
Right. Now, wasn't the actor's name, wasn't it Max Schreck? Wasn't that his real name?
Yeah.
Okay, which is interesting.
Yeah.
Because that name has become like synonymous with all kinds of horror-oriented genres too. Like it's in several different names. People use Max Schreck off the rip like it's some kind of character name, and it's not really a character name. It's that person's name.
It's somebody's name.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Like it's Alan Smith.
Put some respect on my name. Put some respect on it.
Right.
Right.
Oh man, let's not go there.
The later after that, we of course get Bela Lugosi, who creates a very famous version of Count Dracula in 1931. And his version remained canon for as the image of a vampire for decades in terms of this kind of middle-aged man who's very mysterious. He's rich. You know, he lives alone, save for his assistant / familiar. You know, wears cloaks and black clothing, and nobody really knows a lot about him. And I can remember as a kid seeing that version of Dracula in that particular movie, and then also in the Abbott and Costello.
Oh yeah.
The monster movies that they did, because he was in that, right? And so
Yes.
wasn't who's the guy that played Frankenstein monster? I forget his name.
Boris Karloff.
Boris Karloff.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Lon Chaney Jr. as Wolfman, right?
Yeah. All the Universals.
Yeah.
Yeah, classic.
Yeah.
Classic.
Yeah. So I can kind of remember that, but I think the one that I kind of was most familiar with, because it was more in my era, was reruns of Christopher Lee.
Oh yeah, them Hammer movies. Yeah.
Yeah, from like 1958, with Peter Cushing as Van Helsing, you know, the vampire hunter.
Grandma Tarkin.
When you guys think back to that particular era of vampire, what's the one that sticks out to you the most, that you can kind of think of? Like what, you know, of the old school classic sense?
I really have to go back to the Bela Lugosi version, you know, because that's the one that you see, and it transcended that movie, you know, mightily. You know, you see that in all types of representations. I mean, even down to, you know, Count Dracula on the Sesame Street show.
Yeah.
You know, that slick black hair, the white vest, the cloak and everything, even down to the cadence of speech. You know, most people, when they think of how vampires talk, they're thinking of Bela Lugosi speaking. Right. Because he really was from Eastern Europe. Exactly. Right. So he invested that into it. So it was almost like it was tailor-made for him, you know? So I go back to Bela Lugosi. The Hammer movies, like with Christopher Lee and everything, it's... and as much as I love B movies, I never got into those. Like, I've seen a couple of those just in passing, and it's like, man, you know... We had a guest on one time that said, you know, those Hammer movies with Christopher Lee looked like somebody squirted lemon juice in his eye and it got all red. And then he turned around and was like, ah.
Yeah.
He did need some Visine.
Yeah. They were a bit ham-fisted, man. They were a bit ham-fisted for me. I really couldn't get into it. I didn't buy him as that for me. It was okay, but it was like it was set up to be so scary to where it really wasn't. You know what I mean? It actually, interestingly enough, those Christopher Lee images were used a lot in British comics. Back in black and white comics as stills, and they were scarier rendered in black and white in pen and ink than they were to actual see the visuals on television. I think a lot of it too was like limited to the special effects of that time. You know, you had the obvious dry ice in the background.
Sure,
you know, coming up. It's like come on, that's not scary. But my first rendition of acceptance of really liking vampires on television back in those days, Swizz, would have been probably at that television show, short-lived television show, on Sid Marty Krofft called, what was it called? Monster Squad? Where you had,
Yeah, I think so.
You know, where you had the vampire in there, you had a werewolf representation, you had I don't think you had a mummy representation, but there was like 3 of them. I forgot what the third one was. It was a vampire, a werewolf, and somebody else. Maybe it was Invisible Man because it was easy to pull off that effect or something. You know? But yeah, that was my first real I guess indoctrination of that period for vampires.
Yeah. I remember also too, you had so the TV show Night Stalker, the very first episode, the pilot episode featured a vampire, and I remember that being very
that was
scary.
Shit, man.
Yeah, it was very scary.
How can I watch that
shit? Yeah. And really, that was for me the kind of the first introduction, and I'm not sure what year that show debuted. But that was the first time I'd ever seen a vampire not portrayed in the cloak with the collar and this kind of weird Transylvanian kind of what I'm saying. You didn't see the canon that Lugosi and that Lee had established. This guy just wore like a black suit. And that was it, and he had a coffin in his apartment and he just slept in the shit.
He was a dapper gentleman, yeah.
Yeah. And he didn't talk much. I don't remember him talking much in the episode either. And for some reason, that was even more frightening for me as a child. But if you look at it, so really from Shrek all the way to from the 20s to the 70s, the image of the vampire is kind of consistent.
Yeah.
That the thing that I mentioned earlier with the cloaks and rich, mysterious gentlemen and the castles and all that, it was kind of always that. I mean, you saw some, more lighthearted versions of it, like the Munsters.
Yeah.
But even that was still the same, Grandpa was still the same character.
Yep.
And then you see a little bit of a twist on it with Blackula.
Yeah.
Where... the story of Blackula is this African prince goes to Transylvania, gets bitten by Dracula and gets turned.
Yeah.
And part of the reason why he could go, I forget, there was something about trying to get him to suppress the slave trade.
That would have been
something like that. Like
cool.
that was the that was the story. That was the actual story. And then he goes back to, I guess, New York or Harlem or whatever, and then starts, biting pimps and prostitutes and average folks on the street.
That just proves the point right there, Swizz. If you don't give enough of a backstory, depending on what
it just falls apart. Like you're like,
depending on what your focus is, it's like, okay, let's focus on the bullshit and not give enough of the. Let's not give enough of the. Yeah, so that's cool.
It was basically like a black vampire, but he's Snap Wilson.
Hey,
unfortunately,
wasn't Pam Grier in the sequel Scream, Blackula Scream?
Wow, probably
she may have been. I don't remember that.
Yeah, there was a sequel called Scream, Blackula Scream.
Wow.
Yeah. And I think both versions starred William Marshall as the vampire, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And he was an eloquent like stage actor too, dude. Like he just
I think so. I think you're right.
He did some Othello and stuff like that. You know what I mean? So he was pretty well known, and I guess in the kind of, sorry to say this, the Chitlin circuit of theater.
No, that was a real thing. Sure. Yeah. No disrespect.
Yeah, that's what it was.
Yeah. He could have been much more, but that was all he wanted to play him as. So go ahead.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Hey, the other thing I was going to say too, Swizz, is right around there, and definitely in the latter part of the 70s, you do have another twist coming on to, the Dracula mythos with like it being more of a comedic turn. Like, you remember there were a couple of movies that came out in the latter part of the 70s. There was one with Frank Langella playing Dracula.
Okay.
I forget what
was that comedic. I thought that was serious.
No, there were comedic elements to it, and if I'm not mistaken, I should have looked this up. I thought that George Hamilton made one too in the late 70s.
Well, yeah. So George Hamilton's, and that actually takes us into the 80s.
Okay.
George Hamilton's was Love at First Bite.
That's it. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
And I remember that was the first time I'd ever seen George Hamilton, and it was a complete campy, comedic, whatever. And I remember him saying he was having sex with the woman who was supposed to be kind of his, the woman that he had been pining for decades or whatever, and she was reborn as this other person or whatever. Yeah. And she was like, "Should we have a quickie?" And he was like, "Never a quickie, always a longie."
Oh, man. Come on, bro. Come on, George. Damn. Oh,
Wow.
damn.
Wow. Mr. Luggage complexion himself, yeah?
Yeah. He always got that tan.
Yeah.
But that's a good segue into the 80s, Adrian, which you see a different take. You see people starting to move into a different take on vampires.
Oh, yeah.
Certainly like the 60s and the 70s, they all had their styles and their fashions and whatnot and things that marked them as decades. Mm-hmm. But, the 80s, you see people really starting to play with the idea of what the vampire looks like, what they act like. The acting like part is still kind of the same, only comes out at night, sunlight, stakes through the heart, cut the vampire's head off, that sort of thing, fangs and drinking blood.
Right.
But the way that they looked and how they're perceived, you see people kind of starting to embrace more youth culture in their portrayal of the vampires, and also playing with the stories where it's not just, okay, somebody gets turned and then they start biting people and then somebody hunts them down and kills them. End of story. So to start in the 80s, you really have to kind of start in the mid to late 70s where Jaws is released in June of 1975. Yeah. It's the first big summer blockbuster. Mm-hmm. And you start to see studios really realize, oh, wow, we can truly dominate the summer and make a shitload of money. And you see the rise of like Spielberg and Lucas, adventure stories and stories that, evoke like, kids and teenagers and a sense of awe.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so studios are starting to make movies and starting to see real returns on films, that draw in the whole family. So you see, like Superman's in the late 70s, Star Wars. Eventually we get to like Raiders and E.T. and then other kind of things like Goonies and Ghostbusters in the 80s. But my thing is, the image of the vampire, instead of having this guy walking around in 1980 wearing cloaks and black suits and high collars or whatever, and everybody else is wearing, fucking members only jackets and leg warmers.
Not the members only. Wow.
And Jordache jeans and and parachute pants. Yeah. So you see stuff like Lost Boys, young pretty guys with big hair and they're kind of rock and rollish. Bikers. You see Fright Night. Mm-hmm. Stuff like Vampire's Kiss, Near Dark, which Adrian, we talked about earlier. And so we see a different representation pushed more to like young people and what if vampires were in modern day today in the 80s or in the, in that era kind of a thing. But
yeah, I was going to say too, you're talking about the aesthetics, Swizz, of how vampires started to look. They look much younger and everything. Part of that, I just thought about it. There was like a movement in the early 80s, called like New Romanticism, and I'd seen a documentary on that stuff, like with Spandau Ballet and, Adam Ant and stuff like that. The costuming that those guys had, those groups were having around that time, Duran Duran with the big hair and everybody in the group just wearing like these just fashionably disheveled clothing. Okay. Like they just got a Civil War jacket from here, and I'm gonna take a leather jacket from there. I'm gonna get these leather pants, and I'm gonna do my hair up like this and that. Right. It's almost like by the mid 80s, by the time you get to Lost Boys, that whole era is its own aesthetic. It's like when the vampires are introduced on screen, there's always a group of them standing together, and they're all standing contrapposto, just But it was cool though, yeah.
Kiefer was great. Jason Patrick,
the two Coreys, the Frog Brothers, the two Coreys,
and The actress, what's the actress's name?
Jamie Gertz.
Jamie Gertz. Yeah. And Helen, Diane Wiest.
Okay, yeah.
As the mom, Diane Wiest is the mom. Yeah. Yeah, that was pretty great. And it's almost kind of in a way like the MTV-ification of vampires.
Exactly, yes.
What you're saying.
Yes.
You know, is making it look like a almost like a music video as far as the Lost Boys are concerned.
Totally.
To Fright Night, man, oddly enough, I watched the original Fright Night and the remake that came out, I think, in 2010 or 11, maybe, back to back. A couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
And the remake is actually pretty good. It's not bad. It stars Anton Yelchin and
Colin Farrell?
Colin Farrell and Toni Collette.
Okay.
And David Tennant plays the Roddy McDowell character of Doctor Who and Jessica Jones fame.
Yeah.
And it's not bad. My only gripe is that Colin Farrell as Jerry Dandridge, the vampire who moves in next door, he's good. He's well cast and he's good. He does a great job, but he's not quite as cool as the actor who played him in the original one, where he was like, "Hi, Charlie. How you doing? I'm in your house, Charlie. Your mom invited me in. Might suck her blood later. I don't know." That dude was just cool and just kind of smooth, you know?
Yeah.
And they really play it up in Fright Night, you know, where, you know, he's like, "Oh, you can't invite him in." And then even in the new one, he's trying to, he's Colin Farrell says, "Can I get a beer?"
Oh,
and he says, "Yeah." And so Anton Yelchin goes in his kitchen and leaves the door open. Colin Farrell's standing in the doorway, and he goes to the refrigerator. He says, "You gonna invite me in?" He says, "I'll get it for you."
Oh, okay.
And then and Colin Farrell's trying to get in the door, and he can't walk in. He can't. So he's like, "Really, just gonna leave me hanging?" He's like, "Yeah." And then he gives him the beer. And then Colin Farrell takes it. And then later in the movie, because they in this version, in the new version, they never ever invite Jerry into the house. So once they realize, okay, Jerry is a vampire, and his mom and Amy, the girlfriend, they're all on board, and they're all running around the house scared, and you know, Colin Farrell's kind of menacing them from outside the house. And then what Colin Farrell does, and this was kind of a cool twist. Colin Farrell's character is a contractor who builds houses.
Okay.
So he goes and he gets a shovel from his house, and he comes back to their house, and they're looking at him outside the window.
Yeah.
And Colin Farrell starts digging in the front yard, and they're watching him like, "What the fuck is he doing?" And he digs a hole. He digs a hole in the front yard, and he pulls the gas line up and breaks it. And takes a lighter and lights the gas line, and then the fire goes back inside the house. And then he tells him, he says, "If there's no house, I don't have to be invited in." And then the house explodes, and they come running out of it.
Oh, shoot, dang, yo! Damn, yo! Yeah, dang.
Yeah, it was pretty slick, yo. It was pretty slick.
That's good. Hey. Oh, man.
But,
hey, but Swizz, before we leave the 80s, I did want to make mention, you had mentioned Near Dark earlier, and I did want to mention that I think that, you know, that's one of those vampire movies that I think people know of, but not a lot of people have seen, man. And it's good. I mean, it's a good one. You know what I'm saying? Very stylish, directed by Catherine Bigelow, you know.
Oh, yeah.
Starring Lance Hendrickson. Basically, the whole Cameron camp.
The 80s.
Yes. It's like, because I think Cameron wasn't dating Bigelow around this time yet. They were to be married like later in the decade. But like, it's almost like she went to Cameron and said, "Hey, can I have Lance Hendrickson, Bill Paxton, Jeanette Goldstein? Can they come over to my movie?" He's like, "Yeah, sure, they're good. I know them. I'll vouch for them." And it's just really good. And it almost term it like it's a Western vampire movie. Like they have like those Western overtones, you know.
Yeah.
And it's just real cool. And just the thing that gets me too is just the lighting. You know, there's a lot of just great cinematography in that, you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And then just the way that this clan of vampires is portrayed. Like we intimated at the top of the episode, they have to keep moving. They have to keep roving, you know, and they're just like this rogue band, this rogue clan, almost a family of vampires that have been around for hundreds of years. In fact, they have seemingly a young vampire with them, like a kid who looks like he's 9 or 10, but he's actually hundreds of years old. And he has one part to where he's out and he sees this little girl or whatnot. And you think, oh man, he gonna try to bite her or whatnot. No. He looks like a child. He never really had a childhood. He's just trying to connect with another child. You know? So you're like, so in your mind, you're thinking, and they play with that so masterfully. You know what I'm saying? And I won't give away the rest of it, but I will say this. There is one scene in there that is a couple of them, there are standouts. Obviously, there's one where they go into like this bar and the vampires like clean house and they are so menacing. Oh my goodness. Bill Paxton shines in that scene, you know, blood on his fingertips, blood around his mouth. He's like, finger licking good. Oh, just so menacing. Damn. And then the other scene is where the vampires are trapped in this house by the authorities, and the authorities are shooting into the house.
The shootout.
Yes.
Yeah, the shootout. Yeah.
That was the first time, and this has become a visual cliche. You don't see it a lot these days, but the visual cliche of shots coming in and then shafts of light coming in through the bullet holes thereafter. So you see where the bullets come in, like shaft of light, shaft of light. You know what I'm saying? And the light can't touch the vampires. That's why they're afraid. It's pure sunlight coming through. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So each bullet hole and shaft of light is coming closer to them. And I think a couple of them get burned a couple of times. Like, you know, it's too many shafts of light coming in. You know, we got to get out of here. And that was a great scene. So yeah, definitely if you haven't seen it, I wholeheartedly recommend Near Dark, man.
Yeah. Yeah, and the idea too that Adrian in the movie that they're kind of roving in this van, and if they can't find hospice, they take like tinfoil and stuff and then board up the windows and try to find somewhere to park because they don't want the sunlight to get in. And there's a point in that shootout too, like you said, without giving too much away, where one of them has to make a run for the van, and the scene is something I'd never seen before. I was like, wow. It's like, wow. So yeah, Near Dark, I would definitely recommend. What's the actress's name who from Lethal Weapon and from Terminator? Jeanette, and from Aliens?
Oh, Jeanette Goldstein.
Jeanette Goldstein, yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
okay.
She's in it.
Wow.
She's in it. She kind of plays Lance Hendrickson's like his girlfriend or his paramour or whatever in the movie. But moving into the 90s, we started to see more vampires on TV with things like Buffy.
Oh, yeah.
And also Forever Night, which ran for a couple of years.
Angel, yo.
Well, Angel actually comes later, I think.
It does.
Yeah, I think Angel actually comes later. And Angel came from Charmed, right?
It came from.
He came from Buffy. He came from Buffy. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, that's why I led into it.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, you're right. He came from Buffy, but you start to see kind of like emo vampires and them taking the teen vampires thing a step farther than Lost Boys.
Right.
And you see more diverse forms, takes on the form of a vampire. Some of the big movies, I say big movies, but some of the movies of note from the 90s would be like Bram Stoker's Dracula, directed by Francis Ford Coppola. Of
course, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yes, yo. Ooh.
Which, for me, probably the worst part of that movie was Keanu Reeves as the young man. I was just like, dude.
Yeah, you're not ready yet. Yeah, you're not ready yet.
Yeah.
No.
It's harder.
Yeah.
But man, I mean, when Dracula's brides were sucking him, yo, and Vala Tepes comes into the room and gets them off of him, and they all kind of contract as one form.
Yeah.
That shit was scary.
Yeah, yo.
That was scary. That was scary, man.
That was to me
the mingling of.
I'm sorry, D. Go ahead.
No, the combining and mingling of bodies, Adrian, as they retract back from the room, man. I was like, okay, wait a minute, you should be like several forms, but instead you're one. And I was like, what the hell? It was gross, man, but wonderful to see at the same time.
But That's always the thing with with Dracula's, with his brides and his concubines. You always think, okay, you're gonna have this really cool threesome, and then they start sucking your blood, and you're like, damn.
Wait a minute, this ain't.
That's the wrong part. That's the wrong part.
But yeah, Gary Oldman as Count Dracula and Naomi Ryder.
Winona Ryder. Winona Ryder.
Winona Ryder.
Yeah,
What am I
exactly.
thinking? Winona Ryder.
It's okay.
That was a game changer, and that was kind of a thing where it's more of a traditional take on the vampire, but the special effects and the mood that they created with it was something a little different. Where it was like, okay, wow, they really made, when his shadow goes one way and he goes another, and you're like, what?
Damn.
Yeah.
Yeah,
man. And that character design was spectacular, man.
Didn't Ian McKay work on that?
He did.
I
and also
yes. Yeah.
Steranko did as well.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
I forget the Asian young lady that did the actual design for the cloaking of Vlad Tepes and as well as the design of the helm in the very beginning where he's that warrior.
She's a concept artist.
Vlad the Impaler. Yeah, but no,
like
she
a
was
fashion designer
before. Yeah, exactly. Before it was concept art, she was doing that for them. I forgot. I had the book around here somewhere. I should have pulled it out. But go ahead, keep talking.
Okay,
I'll find it.
And then also a big one from that era is Interview with a Vampire, based on Anne Rice's novel. Which starred
Beautiful Louis.
Which starred Antonio Banderas and Tom Cruise and Brad Pitt.
Yeah.
And that was, again, kind of the idea of, let's take a look at the inner life of a vampire. Lestat, the main character, in the books, I think he's presented more tragically, where he kind of isn't who he wants to be. A vampire isn't who he wants to be. And so he kind of toils with that and is confused by it or is bothered by it. But it was a very big movie. It was a big roll of the dice for Cruise to play Lestat, and a lot of the people who were fans of the book did not like Cruise because I think Lestat's supposed to be like 6 feet tall and blonde, and Cruise is not either of those things.
That's right.
Nope.
But I do.
But I remember. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was going to say around that time that it was just Rice mania, when that movie was getting ready to come out. I recall seeing on the news sales of Anne Rice books had started to go up incrementally, tremendously so. Yeah, man.
Yeah, she was a big deal, and her interpretation of the vampire, again, kind of exploring the inner life of the vampire and what the vampire might not like about being a vampire and might be tortured by. That was a big deal, and it really kind of changed the game. And there's a real through line that you can see from Anne Rice's her version of the vampire mythology straight through to things like True Blood and Twilight and other versions that we see later on. There's a movie called I think it's called Only Lovers Left Alive, and you can just kind of see her impact on vampire lore. But another one, and it's kind of almost like a B movie favorite of mine. I know you guys will agree. Is From Dusk Till Dawn.
Oh yeah, come on now,
yeah.
Come on now, yeah. Of
course,
man. Come on, man,
sir.
Oh man, yeah, come on.
Absolutely, and so you have Quentin Tarantino's script and Robert Rodriguez directing. And the thing I liked about the movie is not unlike we were you and I, the three of us were having a text exchange earlier this week, and I was talking about movies that start as one thing and end as another, and From Dusk Till Dawn is definitely that, where it starts as this kind of prison breakout or jailbreak, two criminals on the run, and they take hostages, and they're going to meet at a rendezvous, and then they're going to escape into Mexico, and the rendezvous just happens to be built on the edge of Aztec ruins that were inhabited by vampires, and so everybody in this rendezvous, in this club, this bar, basically are vampires, and they've got to fight their way out of it. And the shit was crazy, yo.
Oh man,
it really was, man.
You have
really
Tarantino's in it. George Clooney's one of the main characters. You have Harvey Keitel. What's the actress's name? I forget her name.
Juliette Lewis.
Juliette Lewis. Juliette Lewis.
Yeah, exactly. That's it.
And you have Sabino, the special effects guy.
Tom Savini.
Tom Savini. Yeah. As what was the character's name with the gun prop on his crotch?
Dang, what was his name? Like he had a memorable name. Like you were supposed to remember it.
Hot Rod, a hot
something
dick
like that.
or something.
Hot dick. You definitely don't want that.
Well, some do, but yeah.
I mean, it like the kind of cameos, almost like the second roles. You know, you had like Cheech Marin, Fred Williamson.
Cheech Marin, yeah.
Yeah, man.
Just the titty twister. We got just the pussy. The pussy.
Yeah, buy one pussy, get one free. Dang.
Wow.
Sir, the titty twister.
Yeah, that's what it was. Yeah.
Was
that
that a drink?
I think that was the name of the bar.
The name of the bar.
Yeah.
Oh damn!
Then you had the mariachi band playing.
Mm-hmm.
And Salma Hayek comes out. She does that really, seductive, hypnotic dance, and then she turns and bites Tarantino's character.
Which he deserved it because he was actually languishing himself in his own actual fetish with his feet.
Yeah.
You know,
and
so he wrote that into the script, obviously.
Yeah, and he killed that woman, and it was just like, ugh.
You know,
but
I saw that in the movie with. I see all these R-rated movies with my mom back in the day, man. We went and saw that.
That is kind of a theme, yo.
I guess so. Thanks, Mom.
Yeah.
But we went and saw this in the movies, right? And I remember the exact moment when the movie turned, and you can see it when Salma Hayek comes out and starts doing the dance. But the camera cuts to show like things changing around the bar, and the telltale was when they bolted that door shut. Everybody in the theater, you can hear this audible gasp like, "Oh shit! Oh shit!"
Already ready.
And then when Salma Hayek turns and bites Tarantino and things get ape shit, the theater was raucous, yo. Everybody, oh my god! Like it was happening inside the theater. And two old black ladies behind me was up there talking about oh my god, this worse than bone chillers. What the hell is a bone chillers? That must be some type of.
What is that, yo?
That must be some super B movie that was on video or something. I've wondered about that because they said it very audibly behind me when everything was happening.
Right.
Oh my god, this worse than bone chillers. Bone chillers. Oh fuck. But yeah, man. But and don't leave the 90s without making an honorable mention for Wes Craven's A Vampire in Brooklyn.
I was just about to bring it up, yo. Yeah. Vampire in Brooklyn starring Eddie Murphy and Angela Bassett
and Kadeem Hardison as his familiar.
Yes. Yeah.
Nice. Wayne in effect.
Not the greatest movie in the world, but it was an interesting take, and that's kind of what I was getting to before about showing some more diverse takes on the form of the vampire and the image of the vampire. You had Vampire in Brooklyn, and you also had starring Kadeem Hardison, Death by Temptation.
Oh yeah, well, James Bond III.
Yes. So, which starred, and again, not a great movie, but Kadeem Hardison, Samuel Jackson, Bill Nunn, and Najee as himself.
Najee. Did he play the instrument in the movie? Because otherwise you would have known it was Najee.
Yeah, well, you would. Why hire Najee if he's not gonna play the fucking saxophone?
Okay, there we go.
You know what I'm saying? It's like having Kenny G in a movie. It's like, man, you gotta play it.
That's not what I paid for.
You just.
It's like Swizz always says, you do one thing well. You do one thing. Do that one thing.
Come on, bro. You had one job. You only had one job to do.
Oh, man.
But we certainly can't leave the 90s without talking about Blade.
Of course. Of course.
Yeah.
You know.
Before we go there, I want to mention the artist who did the wonderful cloaking of Vlad Tepes and Francis Ford Coppola's Dracula. Her name is and was Aiko Ishioka, and she won the award that year for best dress and art direction. And she died on January 21st, 2012. So
okay.
Rest in peace.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Super cool.
But she was awesome.
Yeah.
But on to Blade.
Yeah. So really, you're kind of seeing Blade where, the image of the vampire is pretty much the same, but the image of the vampire hunter becomes different. So Blade as a modern day, half human, half vampire, Van Helsing kind of a character, a super killer of vampires, was awesome.
Oh man. Game changer.
And just a real game changer. And also too, you see Blade, and we've talked about this on the show before, but I consider, and I think you guys agreed with me, that Blade is the beginning of the modern comic book movie as we know it. Without Blade, you don't get to Spider-Man and X-Men and all the stuff that we see in the MCU that comes after it, because it was a huge success, and it was based on a comic book character, and they screwed around with the mythos in the movie and did so well, but Blade
did justice.
Yeah, but Blade was really the game changer, and also too, I think you have to say that Blade ushered in, like shit like Underworld.
Oh, of course. Oh, the whole aesthetic. Hell yeah.
Yeah, the aesthetic and the music and piercings and tattoos and all of that. You really have to give Blade the credit for that.
Yeah. So Lynn Wiseman owes David Goyer a debt and Wesley Snipes a debt, and Guillermo del Toro owes all of them a debt to some degree, because he had reoccurring interactions with all of them in terms of either filming or adding his own personal aesthetic
he directed Blade 2 as well. So he was right there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Blade 2 is probably killed. Blade 2
and I was going to say
excellent.
also, going just outside of film and TV, you had Vampire the Masquerade from White Wolf Games, which was huge. That was a huge deal in the late 90s. And that and Kendrick, exactly.
Yeah.
Like those also lent themselves to that whole gothic, leather-bound, aesthetic too. So, that was also in the air, in the zeitgeist around that time that Blade was coming out. So all of that really coalesced, and Blade took it and popularized it, and it went on for years thereafter. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And before we move on from the 90s and just staying with Blade for a minute, this was, I actually thought about this, Blade really was Wesley Snipes as Blade. This wasn't Blade starring Wesley Snipes. This was Wesley Snipes Blade. To put some respect on his name, he really brought it to life and really made it be what it was. I don't know if another actor could have done it in the way that he did and really made it pop. And so, again, enough respect to Wesley Snipes for really bringing this whole thing into crystallizing, what Blade was and really making it his own.
I'm in rock.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
man.
But as we roll into the aughts, the 2000s, we see definitely, a la some of the things we just mentioned, writers and producers fully embracing youth culture, modern culture, goth, emo, semi-hardcore music and the soundtracks, and then the scoring, tattoos and piercings, modern hairstyles, modern clothing. Definitely gone for pretty much forever. With few exceptions, are the cloaks and the kind of aristocratic kind of look from the 20s and the 30s that we knew for decades on. But more vampires on TV. We've got Angel. We've got Vampire Diaries. We've got the Blade TV series, which was awful, starring old boy from Onyx.
Sticky fingers.
Big old eyes, big old eyes,
yeah.
I forgot what his real name is. Kirk something, but Sticky Fingers.
Sticky Fingers.
Wall-eyed.
And but we also have the very successful, ran for about 6 years, True Blood on HBO.
Oh yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
Sookie Stackhouse.
Sookie Stackhouse, yeah.
Oh, Sookie. Ugh.
That's like a barbecue meal you get at Outback. Come get that Sookie Stackhouse steak.
Let me get that Sookie Stackhouse. I want the potato salad and the baked beans. And the Texas toast on the side.
Damn, yo, I'm hungry, man. Damn.
Hey, and give me some more wipes.
Right? Because you're going to need it.
Man, my bad. Go ahead, Joe.
No.
That's funny, yo. That's funny.
But also, we see some really popular other stuff. And some stuff that didn't do well. We Queen of the Damned, starring Aaliyah.
Yeah.
Right.
I think we see what was the movie with Alyssa Milano, Kiss of the Vampire?
Sounds about right.
That sounds like some old B movie, whatever.
Yeah.
Because then also had Charlotte.
Yes.
What's her name? Charlotte.
The actress from
Charlotte
Golden Child.
Yeah.
And they have like some lesbian scenes, yo.
Oh, you have shown me the scene from that. Okay.
Yeah.
I know what you're talking about now. Gotcha.
Yeah. There's some girl-on-girl action in the movie.
I thought there was several.
Yeah, it was 3 or 4.
Okay.
And I was an Alyssa Milano fan, so I was here for it. So
Yeah.
But you have Queen of the Damned. You have Dracula 2000.
Oh,
which was horrible.
Oh, it was
with,
terrible.
Omar Epps and I forget who else is it. But we also have 30 Days of Night, based on the comic series by Temple Smith and
Steve Niles.
Steve
Niles. Yeah.
Yeah.
We have the movie Van Helsing, which was terrible.
Oh yeah. Oh.
With Kate Beckinsale and
Hugh Jackman.
Wolverine.
Right. With Logan.
Which is what they were trading on to make it a box office success, which for some people it didn't work and some people it did.
Right. And we also have the Twilight series starts in the 2000s with Robert Pattinson and Kristen Stewart
and Taylor Lautner.
Right.
And Taylor Lautner.
Whose team are you on?
And a bunch of other actors in there too. A lot of the kind of character actors that show up in that are people that you've seen in other things.
Mm-hmm. Sparkly vampires, sparkles. Ooh, I remember there was such a big thing about whose team are you on? Are you on Team Edward, Robert Pattinson's team, or are you on the other dudes? Ooh, and that's another recurring thing too, like. This whole supposed war between the werewolves and the vampires.
Yeah.
You see that in Underworld. Right. You see that in Twilight. You see that in several other things. It's like, man, not only is it enough to just have vampires in the movie now, let's throw in another one and have these clans go at each other. Right. And I think that too, might have started with White Wolf Games as well. You know, you had clans of werewolves and vampires.
Did it?
Yes, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah.
The whole vampire masquerade oriented type situation was very much a clan thing. It was Lycans versus the vampires, and Kevin Grievous, which stars in all three of the vampire saga.
I don't know if he's in all three. He's definitely in the first two. And he wrote the screenplay for the first one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and he's awesome. He's awesome. That brother has a voice, man. It's like he's right there with James Earl Jones in terms of gravitas and the voice.
Yeah, and he actually wrote the series with David Williams, and David Williams did the art. For Bass Reeves.
Oh yeah. When it just came out.
Oh
yeah.
Right, the connections.
Yeah. But yeah, Underworld for sure. You can almost hear the "Wake me up inside."
Wake me up! Yeah. Guy, I'm telling you, it just screams 2000 through like 2003. Like anytime you hear that, and then driving guitars. It's always some dude in the back trying to half rap, half rock sing. Wake me up.
Thanks to Linkin Park.
Yes. that slow, then fast, that rock, then rap. Yep. New metal.
Yep. And
man, speaking of dope soundtracks, man, I keep going into the video game thing, man. But I challenge anybody to do a more awesome representation of a cool vampire-ish soundtrack than Information Society. They did this thing for Legacy of Kain series, especially for the Soul Reaver, called Ozar Matricium, and it's just this freaking kinetic, heavily techno-driven, like dirge. It's powerful.
Yeah.
So anybody that knows what I'm talking about, listen to Ozar Matricium by Information Society. I think it's Kurt Harland. Harland. Look it up.
Mentioned him.
Awesome.
You mentioned it before.
Yes.
Yeah, man.
Tell me what's on your mind.
It is all that.
Let that stew for a second.
You got me on that one, man.
Information Society, I want to know. Tell me what's on your mind.
What you're feeling? Okay, nice.
That was that car bomb. You had to ride with it for a second.
Right? That curveball, yo.
Right? Exactly.
It broke over the plate.
It did, yo.
There you go.
Pure energy. Dude.
But, so if you look at some of the examples, like Angel, which I didn't watch Angel, but my impression of it always was kind of like, vampire as this kind of tortured romantic figure, like a Hamlet in a way. Vampire Diaries is, just like teen vampires. In Twilight, it's kind of like the vampire story, but within like this kind of epic love story, which was always kind of a part of it. If you kind of go back,
sure.
The Dracula was always kind of obsessed with this character that he thought was being, reborn in a different decade or whatever, and he was old enough to to follow her, wherever she was, kind of a thing. And then you like Underworld is almost like the vampire is like an underground goth person, kind of an outlier. And then Ultraviolet too.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
With what's the actor?
What?
Jamila Jovovich.
Yeah, I can never pronounce her name. That was
Jovovich.
almost like vampire as like sci-fi movie and a sci-fi action movie in a way. So
that opening sequence, man, from that opening sequence when the I guess it's the vampire hunters are in that helicopter type situation, and they're inside these orbs, and they all come down in this building at the same time. And it's like 4 or 5 of them. They crash through the window, and they all come out at the same time in this sequenced, balletic, almost like uniform manner, and they pull the swords out of there. I'm a sucker for choreography, man, and when it's done really well, unexpectedly, it blows me away and sets the pace for everything.
Yeah.
So
I didn't see the whole thing, but I do remember that opening sequence. And even though she's never had a true hit, Mila Jovovich kills those parts. Like whenever she like Resident Evil,
that's her lane.
Evil, I guess that was a big hit because they did so many of them afterwards. But every time she shows it, she was like Helen of Troy, I think, or anything I see her in, she always kicks ass and she represents it well, and she has great charisma on screen. I don't know how she is as an actor, other than having seen her in The Fifth Element.
Yeah,
Lilu.
Yeah.
Multi-pass.
Yeah. But moving into modern day, into the lot teens and the 10s and 20s and where we are now.
Yeah.
We definitely see some serious injections of other things into the form, into vampires, and in some cases even like a twist. You see like coming of age stories. You see more of the exploration of the inner life of the vampire. There's a documentary style TV show on vampires like Modern Family and The Office, and even some historical fiction takes on vampire lore. So we've got Let the Right One In.
Yeah.
Which did you guys ever see Let the Right One In?
No, and you've been recommending it for years though. Yeah.
Forever.
It's fantastic. It is fantastic. Definitely see the Swedish version. The American version's fine with Chloe Marie Grace. But I highly recommend the Swedish version with the subtitles, which is fine.
Yeah, of course.
But Only Lovers Left Alive, Tilda Swinton, and Tom Hiddleston. That just came out a few years ago. And we also see the end of the Underworld series, hopefully.
Yes.
In modern day. But as far as the historical fiction take, Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter.
That was so unexpected. I saw that. That was so unexpected. That was so out of left field. I was like, damn, this is good, Joe. Damn.
Yes. I mean, you have to take it absurdly.
Fun,
it's absurd. But once you're on board with it, you're like, all right, fuck yeah, Abraham Lincoln is killing the fuck out of vampires with this magic axe.
Yeah, man. And, and the whole thing, I mean, there were several things that just made perfect sense. Like, these plantation owners, of course they're vampires. Of course they're keeping slaves to feed off of them. Of course. You know what I'm saying? And then they tied into the Underground Railroad. All of that shit was dope. Oh, man. I need to go watch that shit again.
Yo. I mean, again, it's not like a fantastic movie.
Yeah.
But like some of the things that I was like, wow, this, and then I remember the head vampire in that movie. He was the one who had that real long monologue about how it wasn't fun being immortal.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like everybody dies and you see things change and then you see things come back. And he kind of talked about the sameness and the listlessness and the aimlessness of your life because there's no reason to have a goal because, I mean, again, there's no end. As long as you stay out of the sun and nobody puts a stake in your chest, you're going to live forever.
Yeah.
I was just like, damn. But yeah, all of those things. And it was like, oh, fuck yeah. That was like on some shit like Truth, the Captain America character, Isaiah Bradley. Like, of course they would experiment on black soldiers first with the super soldier formula.
Yeah.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah. And I'll tell you, the thing that got me too was like in that third act where they're having the fight aboard the train. Oh man, that was so great. And then the part two where they're trying to escape the slaves and everything, and some of the night riders or something like that ride by or whatnot, and then they all come out of the woods like, come on, y'all. And he's emancipating, he's freeing the slaves. Man, that was just such a good movie. I need to track that down and get like a copy.
Yeah.
Yeah, yo.
Yeah. Same here. And that, that whole thing of, we got all kind of railroads.
Yeah. Oh, that was great. Right? I was like,
yeah, yo.
Great line. Oh man, that was wonderful, man.
Yeah. That was dope as fuck, man.
Yo. Wow. Okay, so
we talked about the Fright Night remake, but also animated the Hotel Transylvania movies.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Those were both apparently very popular because they made a sequel to it. But on TV, we have the BBC did a Dark Shadows.
They did a remake.
Yeah.
Yeah, like a few years ago.
They did.
And I heard mixed things about it. Did you see it, D?
No, it wasn't not Tom. They did that hokey version of it, which was.
No, you're thinking about that Tim Burton version, right?
Yeah,
Johnny
they had
Depp
Old
as Barnaby Collins. Barnabas Jones. Buddy Epson.
Right? Yeah, man. I never got into the Dark Shadows, man, because again, it came from that Hammer period where it was like it was overdone, where the actors were so into it that it was like, okay, you need to dial it back a little bit, buddy.
Yeah,
you're,
Barnabas.
You're following Christopher Lee as your lead, and that was good for that time. But that was then. This is now.
Yeah.
But I can see how Dark Shadows would be to remake that, how that would be enchanting for and actually a good lead in and segue to people that hadn't experienced it before.
Yeah.
And kind of bringing back what's old is new again.
Yeah. And I think another British one was Being Human.
That sounds familiar. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was good too, man. That had your boy in it. What's his name? From he plays Darth Maul in the animated series. What's his name? He was also in Battlestar Galactica. I'll think of his name in a minute.
Okay.
But he's very very like good looking, stalwart looking dude. I can think of his name. But go ahead. I'll find it.
And then I don't know if you guys were aware of this, but Robert Rodriguez did a TV series for From Dusk Till Dawn.
Yes, on the El Rey Network.
Yeah.
For his own network,
Yeah. It's not great. I watched like one episode of it, and I was like, ugh. And actually, Don Johnson is in it.
Okay.
I forget who some of the other actors are, but I remember Don Johnson was in the very first episode. And it tracks the two brothers, the Gecko brothers.
Okay.
Across Texas and into Mexico. But also, and then what I mentioned earlier, What We Do in the Shadows, which was based on a movie starring Jermaine Clement and Taika Waititi that came out, I believe, in like probably 6 or 7 years ago. It was a small movie, but very popular. And then they made a TV series out of it on FX that Taika and Jermaine produced, which is very good. I highly recommend it for anyone who's not seen it. It's funny. The characters they cast are funny. Laszlo and Nadja and Nandor, and Nandor's familiar's name is Guillermo. And Nandor refuses to turn Guillermo, even though Guillermo has worked basically as his assistant for like 10 years. And they live in this house in Staten Island, and they have some good guest stars. Doug Jones guest stars as the Baron. Mark Hamill shows up as this vampire killer named Jim.
Jim.
And they have this really wonderful guest scene with the Vampiric Council, and they cast a bunch of actors, the actual actors who have played vampires in other movies. So Tilda Swinton shows up. I think Evan Wood is his name. He shows up. Paul Rubin shows up. Danny Trejo is in it.
Wow.
And they even mentioned Kiefer Sutherland couldn't make it.
Wow.
Tom and Brad, they couldn't make it either. And they have Wesley Snipes in it as well, but he's on Skype on TV for the meeting, and his Skype is all glitchy, and they keep saying the Skype is glitchy here.
Okay, all right.
and it's super funny because Wesley is dressed. He's just dressed as Wesley. He's got on sunglasses and one of those goofy hats, and everybody's like, "Dark greetings, everyone! Dark greetings, dark greetings." The show is very funny, and again, if you're willing to embrace that kind of documentarian. Rom-com style, not rom-com, but a situation comedy style of shooting. It's very good. What we do in the shadows. But are you guys watching any vampire stuff? Is there anything that's catching your eye now?
Vampire oriented?
Yeah.
Loosely. I mean, arguably, I don't know. It's not really vampire oriented. I can't say that. It's a real stretch. I would say. What is that show I was watching? I watched there's a lot of blood. I was going to say it's vampire, but it's not. A lot of blood supplements. But Raised by Wolves.
Oh yeah.
It's not really
That's not vampire.
It's not really vampiric, but it's got some strange like vampiric moments in there, dude. So
yeah.
So no, I will say this though, Swizz, as we're talking about Nosferatu, kind of booking it for me is there's actually a remake that's being made now on Nosferatu, starring Doug Jones.
Oh really?
Yeah, of Guillermo del Toro's main go-to as far as body acting goes, and he's actually going to be he's gone beyond that now. Now he's going into doing like actual speaking roles, which he's had a couple of speaking roles too as well.
He definitely has.
But he's been in the game. He's been in the game for a minute, man. He deserves that, man, because he's a hell of an eloquent actor, dude. I think in terms of that kind of genre.
Let me ask you guys a question. I was just thinking about this as Dee was mentioning that. So, I Am Legend, the book was about vampires.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
But were the characters in Will Smith's remake or his version of the film, were they supposed to be vampires or zombies or some kind of a vampiric zombie hybrid?
Yeah, they were like a vampiric zombie hybrid because they had a need for blood, and their symptoms were caused by some kind of hyper desire and need for hemoglobin or something along those lines.
Okay.
So it was very much a thing where the disease caught on.
Okay.
And just spread.
Okay.
I understand it.
Yeah. That was one of the things I always liked about 30 Days of Night, because Steve Niles talked about it when, after it got optioned and went into production. I love the idea that he was approaching it as if it was like bubonic plague. It was a disease that affected the body and made you, thirst for blood or whatever. And that I think technically you didn't live forever, but you just aged slower. And the sun wouldn't necessarily kill you unless it was prolonged. Or no, I guess it did, because it killed him at the end of the movie, at the end of the book. But I always liked that take on it, and the guy who played the head vampire in the film with I forgot the actor's name. I can't remember anybody's name today.
That's okay.
He was also the actor showed up in Penny Dreadful. Josh Hartnett.
Okay, yeah, that's right.
Josh Hartnett.
Okay.
Yeah. The guy who played the head vampire, who was also Stryker in Wolverine, the first Wolverine movie.
Who that? Brian Cox?
That's right, he was.
No, not Brian Cox. In the first, that's the X-Men.
Oh, okay.
The Wolverine movie.
Oh, my bad. Okay.
Right.
Yeah, the Wolverine movie. But I remember he was like, said something like, somebody was begging for their life. I think it said, "Oh God." And
Yeah.
What does he say?
There is no God.
Yeah. And then he just like devoured this person.
Damn.
But
Yeah.
But I remember Temple Smith's art was really crazy and freaky looking. And it was an interesting idea, the idea that vampires would be like, okay, where can we go where we can fuck shit up for like a month?
I'll take a vacation. I need a getaway.
Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah, yo. Like, well, they were European, so maybe they were on holiday,
Man, speaking of favorite lines, dude, my favorite line from Blade 2, man, was your boy Nomak, man. When he goes in and they think he have him. It's like, what is your name? He's confident, like he's some kind of disease or whatever, and they're about to pin him, man. Pin him to the. You have a very unique blood type, and we're gonna pin you to the whatever you're giving blood for a long period of time. And he starts laughing and shit. And it's like this crazy laugh. His name is Luke Goss. Luke Goss. He slayed that role, dude. And he goes, Obirshi. Namana Obirshi. And he takes a big ass chunk out of his neck, dude. That was my shit.
Yes.
That was my shit. He was saying, basically, translation is, I hate vampires. I hate fucking vampires, is what he was saying, yo.
Oh, really?
Like, wow. Yeah. He's like, he nailed that role, dude. He was like, God, that's one of my favorite characterizations of vampires altogether, because they took it to the next level as far as like, the evolution of what they could become, based on how, they were experimenting to create the ultimate vampire, which is supposed to be, defeat Blade, ultimately, because he was their nemesis. He wouldn't like come to their fold to find out how to become a Daywalker. So they decided, well, we'll create somebody that can help, fight Blade. It just spun out, and got crazy.
Adrian, as far as Near Dark goes, man, did it strike you as being inventive or new? The fact that there's like, okay, just give these people a transfusion, get all the vampire shit out of them, put new shit in them, and they won't be vampires anymore.
Remember what I told you about the ending? I said it is great. That's a great movie, but the ending, I'm like, that just seemed like a cop out because the lead character, I think his name's Adrian Pastar. He goes throughout the whole movie. You know what I'm saying? And there's kind of like a time limit almost leading you to the ending. And so they get out of all of these events and everything, and it just so happens that his dad is a veterinarian, if I remember. So he was able,
something like that, yeah.
So he was able to have the equipment on hand. He's like, let's just get you in here, son. Let's just get you in here. Just lay down, And then he wakes up in the morning. He's hooked up to the IV and everything. Has the transfusion, and you're thinking, did it work? And of course it worked miraculously.
Yeah.
And so everything's fine. I think it would have been a much more satisfying ending, though dark, if he had, even with that, he still remained a vampire. Like, it didn't work. So yes, now he's doomed forever to walk this course. You know what I'm saying? But for what it was, man, for us outside of that, Near Dark was pretty inventive, especially in the portrayal of vampires. because it came out in 87 also with Lost Boys. So you start seeing this proliferation of clans of vampires, families of vampires now, groups together, this outlaw band of vampires now. You know, so that and Lost Boys really started to popularize that whole aesthetic and theme of vampires going forward for the next few years.
Gotcha.
I like that.
Gotcha. One last I'll mention, and it's not a great movie, but it was pretty entertaining. And it wasn't quite vampires. I'm trying to remember now. It came out in 2018, Overlord.
Oh, with the World War II D-Day. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
I half thought about seeing that because they had me at D-Day, but I was just like, So did you see it? Did you watch it?
Yeah. I saw it.
How was
my wife
it?
and I watched it. J.J. Abrams produced it, and like you were saying, it's on D-Day. It's a World War II movie.
Yeah.
And they essentially land behind him. You know, they parachute behind enemy lines. It starts off as not even the first half, really. The first third, first 20% of the movie is just a World War II movie. And then as they get into this castle and this bunker, and they realize that they're conducting experiments, and they're essentially taking people and turning them. I'm not sure if they were vampires or zombies or vampire zombies, but they're experimenting on them and turning them. And so one of the SS officers who's kind of in the village, and he's kind of he's an asshole, and he's a Nazi, so of course he's an
exactly.
asshole. But he's
Right, exactly.
he's kind of menacing the townspeople, and he kind of comes into this house and menaces this girl, and you know the soldiers are hiding upstairs in the attic, like you know Anne Frank's family or something. And then eventually they capture this guy, and he's an officer.
Yeah.
And they beat the shit out of him and tie him up and start torturing him to try to get information. What are they doing inside this castle? What are these experiments? This shit looks crazy. And he tells them, he says the Third Reich has 1,000-year plan for domination.
That's right.
For 1,000-year plan, you need 1,000-year soldier. And it was like, oh shit, okay. So so they were really going in for it.
Okay.
But
Wow.
But the movie stars Wyatt Russell, who is Kurt Russell and Goldie Hawn's son, I believe.
Get out. Okay.
Yeah. And there's another actor, black actor in the movie who's very good. Jovan Adepo is his name.
Okay.
He's very good. Bokeem Woodbine is in it for a minute. Of course, he gets killed.
Oh, I'm gonna have to see it now.
Yeah.
Bokeem.
Yeah, Bokeem Woodbine is in it. And there's some other character actors in it, but Overlord came out 2018. It's definitely worth your time. It's got a pretty good rating as far as the critics are concerned. I just don't know anybody personally other than myself who's seen the movie.
Yeah. I remember it coming out, and like I said, you know, I was attracted because it was World War II. But once I saw that there was another element into it, I was like, I think I might hold off of it till I see what other people are saying. And I never heard anything else about it from anybody.
Yeah. I'm
gonna queue it up for sure.
Yeah, my only big criticism is Wyatt Russell. He's a good-looking guy, of course. You know, Goldie Hawn and Kurt Russell are your parents.
Yeah.
But he's running around in World War II with this long, luscious hair with mousse in it. And I'm like, dude, they would have shaved that shit off day one.
Exactly. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you'd have never got out of boot camp wearing your locks all long and flowing, you know.
That concludes this episode of Sidebar Forever, hosted by Dwight Clark, Swain Hunt, and Adrian Johnson. You can find us online at sidebarforever.com. Any emails or questions can be directed to us at sidebarforever@gmail.com. And also, subscribe to us on social media. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Instagram. Sidebar Forever is copyright 2020. Dwight Clark, Swain Hunt, and Adrian Johnson.